All right, music fans, welcome back. It's Dave, the real music observer, observing real music in real time for real people, just like you, just like me. Steve Augeri recently shared a video of yours truly talking about his latest single, which you can stream and download and do all those fun things too. For your listening enjoyment. I was on board as saying it probably is the best vocal performance he's had since leaving the band Journey. Steve put that on Twitter and also on his Facebook page, and he actually called yours truly his champion. Yes! That makes me feel good. I have been championing Mr. Steve Augeri for quite some time. First of all, again, above all else, probably one of the nicest human beings in the music business. And if I get a chance to see Steve Augeri perform, hey Steve, if you're in Florida, look me up. Maybe a ticket or two. Just saying. It'd be cool to see Steve. Look, the guy has reinvented himself outside of Journey. As you know, he had the vocal issue. And at times in concert, Steve is certainly a guy you're rooting for to hit those notes. He's doing the Dirty Dozen, and he just strikes up the band, and the band plays the tune in the original key. And Steve does a fairly good job with it. There are moments where you're pulling for him that he's going to hit that note, and oftentimes he does. And again, I'm just being honest, these are difficult songs, and Steve's voice has been through the ringer, and probably it's just not humanly possible to do what he did and then to come back and then to keep doing it and so forth. But he does well enough where fans are showing up. They're showing up for a couple of reasons. Number one, Steve was the lead singer in Journey. All right, so that's a biggie. Number two, he's a great singer. If you haven't heard Steve's music in the group Tall Stories, especially the first album, second album I'm a little, but the first album is a classic. It's just one of those great albums, and probably the reason why Steve Augeri actually got to be the singer in Journey, because the Tall Stories debut, I think it was 1991, was just absolutely brilliant from start to finish and really showcased Steve's vocals. Look, Steve, by the way, Steve, I'm not comparing Steve Augeri to Steve Perry. I think they're two different animals. I think Steve Augeri has a different voice. He can maintain some of the same vocal attributes that Steve Perry had, but he's a different vocalist. I think Arnell has probably more of the Steve Perry sound in his voice, or at least he did initially. Again, he's probably been burnt out a little bit singing these songs over and over again, as we've covered here. But Augeri had his own thing, and it worked in Journey because it was in the same vocal family, but it was kind of like a different family tree, you know. And for all intents and purposes, Steve Augeri did what he was asked to do and more. He did it, for 7 years? And 7 years is a long time. Arnell is 10, 11 years now. Steve Perry continuously was 10 years, and then he came back briefly. So all of these guys are kind of in the same neighborhood. The only guy who probably isn't is Jeff Scott Soto, who was only around briefly and probably could still be there singing the same way he sang. I just think Jeff ruffled some other feathers in the band, and just because they thought he didn't really sound the way he needed to sound. But Jeff had the vocal horsepower to run that baby and to keep it like a fine-tuned machine, but that didn't work out, as we all know. And then you got guys like Kevin Chalfant who are out there, and Robert Fleischman, who was briefly in the band, and so forth. Look, I'm just getting back to Steve Augeri here. I'm glad I can be Steve's champion. I would suggest going over to Spotify, going over to YouTube, going over to iTunes, and supporting Steve's work. I think, you know, for what the guy's been through and the current climate of music that's out there, I think that Steve Augeri brings something very special and very vintage to the table. He understands melodic rock, he understands decent songwriting, and his songs are catchy and interesting, and oftentimes vocally and lyrically give you some food for thought. So that's it. I'm glad I can be Steve Augeri's champion. I look forward to helping knock out some of those lesser-known vocalists to pave the way for more Steve Augeri. I'm Dave, and this is The Real Music Observer. I'll be back with more real music in real time for real people just like you right there and just like me. See you then.